Good evening, YouTube. Tyler Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. This is going to be a fast overrun of a weekend forecast that we've kind of already touched on lightly throughout the course of the week. It's going to be very active during this time, and we've already discussed some of the stuff that's going on, so don't expect this to take long. We have Winter Storm Piper that's hanging out over the western half of the U.S. here, causing a lot of trouble, bringing wintry weather to a lot of areas that are not used to it. This will persist through the next day, dropping feet of snow in the southern California region, especially towards the higher elevations. Although these snow levels will be dropping towards some of the valleys here, maybe even a few hundred feet above sea level. As a result, winter storm warnings and even a few blizzard warnings are possible here, as winds could be exceeding above 40 to 50 miles an hour. So driving conditions are going to be very treacherous across this region. I would honestly discourage a lot of travel across these regions over the next day or so. That being said, we already know the deal there. We have a little clipper system that's coming in right now, which is what we're seeing right here. This clipper system is going to drop light to moderate snow for a lot of places. Nothing too crazy, but nothing too out of the ordinary for these guys. But considering what we already just went through with Winter Storm Olive, this is a little bit of insult to injury, especially to some of these areas that received significant ice, where we had over 1 million power outages. I still haven't gotten any reports of ice storm totals. Definitely imagining, from what I've been hearing, about quarter inch to about half an inch is definitely reasonable to believe. And then over here towards the southeast, we have a few ongoing showers and a couple of rumbles of thunder possible across this region as we head into the evening and overnight hours. So that's what we have going on for today. There was a marginal risk earlier today across the west coast of California as Piper was moving in and running into a little bit of warm air loft. And this would allot for a chance of maybe a severe storm or two, maybe being able to drop a quick tornado or damaging winds. No reports so far of that. So nothing of major significance other than the snow going on across this region here. We do, of course, have the enhanced risk on Sunday, where Oklahoma City and Norman are still in play here. Fort Sill as well. This stretches into Texas around Wichita Falls and various other areas towards the Texas Panhandle. Slight risk extends all the way up into south central Kansas, I'd say. Wichita is involved in that, and a few other larger cities, Andover as well. We're very familiar with severe weather, especially after what we saw last year and in, previous years historically. Not used to seeing it in February, though, so it's a little interesting there. As far as other areas in the slight risk, we have Tulsa, not Wichita Falls is actually in the enhanced, just mentioned that. We have Abilene involved, Woodward, Oklahoma, and Denton, Texas too. So we'll be watching those guys for an increased threat of severe. But we also can't forget about these people in the enhanced risk, or the marginal risk region. We have Lincoln, Nebraska, just outside of there. Kansas City, you're in this marginal risk. Springfield as well. It even stretches into parts of northwestern Arkansas. Slips back down towards Dallas. You guys are in this as well. And then we can see just to the east of Amarillo, the city, and the cities of Liberal and Garden City, Kansas. You guys are in play for maybe some slight chance of a severe storm or two within, let's say, the early part of Sunday. So let's go ahead and take a look at the temperatures. We're kind of going to get to see a good idea of how this stuff will come to be, especially on the severe side of things. So another thing that we'll get to note here as this storm system rolls in, you'll get to see these cold temperatures hit and when the probability of snow comes in as Piper's low comes across shore. If you look closely, you can see how Olive comes in, or why am I calling it Olive? Piper, as Winter Storm Piper comes in. You can see that cold air that's circulating around the center. Once it gets in across land, really starts to develop, really starts to sink its teeth in here, so to speak, towards these higher elevations. We're getting into the 20s. To think that we would even have a point where we would say that somewhere like Los Angeles is getting into the low 40s is crazy. And the temperature will continue to drop throughout the day. We will see, I do think there's a point where we will see a few snow flurries across there, at the very least towards the lowest levels. Towards the higher elevations, we could see accumulating snow there, and with those higher winds, blizzard conditions are definitely more than possible. And to see the west in general just being colder than average, still stuck in this negative PNA type setup. So this cold air is going to remain across this region. Another thing to take a close look at are the cold temperatures across the northern states. This is going to be lingering for a little bit, but Sunday it does look like we start to get a little bit of an improvement. Also, another thing to note, as Piper moves in with its cold air, warm air ends up evecting from the Baja and parts of the Gulf, and they end up meeting up here across the panhandle of Texas. What ends up happening later across the day, that warm sector stretches all the way into Kansas and even parts of Nebraska here, and look what happens right here. Front forms, dry line forms, storms fire off across this region, and we have our contrast point. Got 60s right here, 40s right here, and this will help severe weather keep its momentum through the overnight. And we also have a threat to watch for as we head into Monday, mainly around Monday afternoon. Mostly going to be a squall line. There's actually a slight risk that's been issued for that on day 4. We'll get into that in tomorrow's video, though. So let's go ahead and take a look at the precip type here. It's going to show what the radar could potentially look like. Again, here is Winter Storm Piper. Few additional showers and storms possible across the south, and then of course our Clipper system here. So we watch these two storm systems move off in the east, and then we watch Piper move off to the west. Meanwhile, while all of that is going on, a new player emerges here across the northwest, and it brings in heavy snow for a large portion of this region over the course of Saturday into Sunday. And then we have even bigger storms coming in right around the end of the month to close things out. And then, of course, we have our severe weather threat that's associated with the warm side of Piper. So we end up seeing this snow squall develop right here. And then when that warm air and cold air clashes, it's almost like watching a powder keg go off. Boom. Line of storms right here. QLCS with all hazards possible, including the threat for tornadoes. Persistent to the overnight, and then we'll have to watch as this low scoots off to the east for an additional threat on Monday. So that's what we have going on there. And then the last thing to look at is the snowfall totals we could see over the next 60 hours. It's pretty much the same all across the board here as far as the west is concerned. Snow totals are going to be most ridiculous towards the southern end of the Sierras here. Then over towards the Rockies, we have some pretty significant totals. Towards the valleys, we aren't going to really be seeing much over the course of the next couple of days. But that's to be expected. That's going to change as we head later into next week. The interesting part to look at is the variance in snowfall totals across the east. We could see about an inch or two across parts of Wisconsin and Michigan here. No surprise there. It's mainly across the global models. Once we get into the regionals, the totals drop just a little bit here. What's really interesting, though, is we still end up seeing a pocket where we could get up to 2 to 3 inches across a good chunk of the Northeast, especially around New York. I haven't really been seeing too much that would make me believe that this would occur, but I've been seeing it all across all the models here, which I find interesting. And then when we look over towards areas like Maine, totals are a little less actually. Towards the Adirondack are where the highest where our highest totals are going to be, making sense mostly because it's a higher elevation. So we're just going to keep a close eye on things over there across New York, across the Adirondacks. couple of big cities could be involved here. We're going to have to watch Baltimore to see if they'll get above an inch of snow. Nothing too far out of the ordinary for you guys, though. So that being said, that's pretty much the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, you already know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video to anyone that may find this useful. And, of course, let me know in the comments where you are and what your thoughts are on the weather that you're dealing with at the time. That being said, this has been Tyler Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys in the next video. You guys have a good night.